Dozens of tiny, monstrous things now crawl through my apartment, and they call me father. This twisted mockery of a family is my life now, and it all began with the single greatest mistake a lonely man can make. Alright, settle in. Turn down the lights if you want. What I'm about to tell you isn't a story I'm proud of. It's not something I've ever told another living soul. It's a scar on my mind, a piece of rotten code running in the background of my life every single day. Most of you probably think the worst thing that can happen on a date is getting ghosted or having to sit through a boring movie. I wish my biggest problem was an unanswered text. My name is Alex. Or, it was. I don't feel like Alex anymore. I'm just the vessel that came after. Before all this, I was a graphic designer. Lived alone in a decent apartment downtown, worked too much, and spent most Friday nights doom scrolling on my phone, feeling that familiar, dull ache of loneliness. That's where she found me. Not on some dating app. In the wild. I was at a little 24-hour coffee shop called The Daily Grind, trying to finish a project on a Tuesday night. It was late, almost 1 a.m. The only other person there was her. She was sitting in a corner booth, sketching in a worn leather notebook. I noticed her because, well, you couldn't not notice her. She had this waterfall of raven black hair that hid most of her face, and she was dressed in these strange, flowing dark clothes that seemed out of place in a cheap coffee shop. There was an elegance to her, an old-world stillness that was magnetic. I needed more coffee, and on my way back from the counter, I accidentally dropped a sugar packet near her table. Classic move, I know. Lame. But it worked. She looked up, and for a second, her hair shifted. I caught a glimpse of her eyes. They were a startlingly deep, warm brown, almost like polished wood. They seemed to pull me in. Clumsy, she said, her voice a low, melodic hum. It was like honey and smoke. Yeah, that's me. Alex, I said, extending a hand. She didn't shake it. She just looked at my hand for a moment, then back at my face, a tiny, knowing smile playing on her lips. Lilith, she said. We talked for hours. Or rather, she talked. She spoke about art, about history, about the patterns in nature. She was brilliant, captivating. But looking back, there were red flags. Tiny little glitches in the matrix that my lonely, desperate brain chose to ignore. She never talked about herself. No mention of a job, family, or where she was from. When I asked what she was sketching, she just smiled that enigmatic smile and said, anatomy. Another thing was her stillness. She barely blinked. And when she moved, it was with a fluid, deliberate grace that was almost unnatural. Like a predator conserving energy. At around 3 a.m., she closed her notebook. I should go. But I'm not ready for this conversation to end. My heart hammered in my chest. My place? Or yours? I blurted out, a little too eagerly. Mine, she said, without hesitation. It's close. Her apartment building was old, one of those pre-war brownstones with ornate carvings on the facade. But inside, her apartment was starkly modern and minimalist. Too minimalist. There were no photos. No books, besides the one she carried. No personal knickknacks. The only art on the walls were these large, abstract paintings in black and gray, intricate designs that looked like a cross between a spider's web and a neural network. They made my eyes hurt if I stared too long. There was also a smell. Faint, but there. Something like ozone after a thunderstorm, mixed with a cloying, sweet scent I couldn't place. Like flowers on the verge of rotting. Drink? She asked, already pouring 2 glasses of a dark red wine. I should have said no. I should have noticed the bottle had no label. But I was mesmerized. She put on some strange, ambient music, all low drones and subtle clicks. We sat on her couch, and she moved closer. Her skin was cool to the touch. The whole time, I felt like I was in a trance, moving through someone else's dream. Things progressed. We ended up in her bedroom. And that's when things got stranger. She was impossibly strong, her grip on my shoulders leaving marks. Her movements were precise, efficient, almost arachnoid. It was intense and overwhelming, and in my intoxicated state, I mistook it for passion. Afterward, as I lay there, my head began to spin violently. The wine. It hit me like a ton of bricks. "I need some water," I mumbled, stumbling towards what I thought was the bathroom. I remember gripping the sink, splashing cold water on my face. I looked up at my reflection in the mirror, but my own eyes seemed to be swimming in shadow. The room tilted. The last thing I saw before everything went black was her reflection standing in the doorway behind me. But in the mirror, for just a fraction of a second, I could have sworn I saw too many arms. Too many eyes. Then, nothing. The music shifts. It becomes more dissonant, with a low, throbbing hum in the background. Pain. That's the first thing that clawed its way back into my consciousness. A throbbing, crushing pain in my head, like my skull was caught in a vice. My vision was a blurry, crimson-tinted mess. I could feel blood pounding in my ears, and a heavy pressure on my chest made every breath a struggle. I was hanging upside down. As my eyes fought to focus, the room swam into view. It was a basement. Stone walls slick with moisture, the smell of damp earth and decay filling my lungs. Massive, thick cobwebs, far larger than any I'd ever seen, draped everything like grotesque funeral shrouds. They weren't dusty and old, they looked fresh. Almost wet. My body was bound tightly. Not by rope. It was some kind of sticky, fibrous material that gave slightly when I struggled, only to re-stick to my skin and clothes with a sickening tearing sound. It was warm. It felt organic. Alive. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog in my brain. "They'll hear you," a voice in my head screamed. Whoever did this. I tried to stay quiet, focusing all my energy on freeing myself. But it was useless. The more I struggled, the tighter the bonds seemed to wrap around me. I could feel them constricting, a slow, patient pressure. I looked around the basement more carefully. In one corner, I saw a heap of what looked like old clothes and bones. And next to it, another cocoon. Smaller than mine. It was torn open from the inside, and it looked dry and brittle. I wasn't the first. The thought sent a new wave of terror through me, so powerful it made me gag. The blood pressure, the claustrophobia, the sheer horror of it all, it was too much. My composure shattered. I started to scream. Raw, desperate screams that tore at my throat. I didn't care if they heard me. I couldn't take another second of being trapped like this. And that's when I heard it. Tap. Click. Tap tap click. A sound from the top of the wooden staircase in the far corner. It wasn't the heavy tread of a man. It was light, sharp, rhythmic. Like tap dancing shoes, but with a metallic, scraping quality. Ah, a familiar, honey and smoke voice drifted down from the darkness. "You're awake, dear." I was beginning to worry. Lilith. She began her descent. A tall, slender silhouette against the dim light from upstairs. Her long, tangled hair shrouded her face. But my blood ran cold as I processed the image properly. She was holding the railing with one hand, and another hand was pressed against the wall. And as she moved further into the light, I saw two more arms, long and spindly, gripping the ceiling above her, pulling her along with an eerie, insect-like grace. The tapping sound wasn't shoes. It was her feet. long, bony legs ending not in feet, but in multi-jointed appendages tipped with sharp, chitinous barbs that clicked and scraped against the wooden stairs. I opened my mouth to scream again, but only a choked whimper came out. She reached the bottom of the stairs and lifted her head, her hair parting like a curtain. Her face. It was almost human. But where her mouth should have been, her jaw unhinged and split apart, revealing a set of massive, glistening black mandibles that folded outwards with a wet click. And above her normal brown eyes, 6 more pairs of smaller, jet black eyes opened all at once, like tiny, polished beads of obsidian, all staring directly at me. She let out a shriek. It wasn't human. It was a high-pitched, chittering wail that echoed off the stone walls and vibrated in my bones. She rushed towards me, her movements unnervingly fast. 2 of her clawed hands grabbed my body, pinning me against my bonds. The other 2 came up to my face, her sharp claws digging into my cheeks, holding my head immobile. My bladder let go. The warmth of urine spreading down my leg was a distant, humiliating sensation compared to the primal terror of her upside-down face looming over mine. Her mandibles locked onto my face, the sharp points digging into the skin near my temples and jawline. I cried out as I felt a disgusting, fleshy tube, a proboscis, extend from the center of her maw and force its way into my mouth. I gagged, struggling violently, but her grip was like steel. I felt a thick, warm fluid begin to pump its way up my throat. It tasted like metal, rotten fruit, and something else, something fertile and alive. My gag reflex failed. I couldn't stop it. I was being force-fed. Violated from the inside out. After what felt like an eternity, the flow stopped. She retracted the grotesque tube back into her face. The mandibles folded inward with another wet snap, and her face became horrifyingly normal again. The extra eyes closed, vanishing into her skin, leaving only the 2 warm, brown eyes I remembered from the coffee shop. She stroked my hair. Her touch was now gentle. "SHHH, SHHH, she cooed, her voice calm and soothing, which was somehow the most terrifying thing of all. "It's all right now. It's all over." I tried to spit, to vomit, to get the vile substance out of me, but I was too weak. "Hello, dear," she said, that same relaxed tone from our date. "Thank you. For such a wonderful time. You were perfect." She turned, folding her extra arm seamlessly behind her back, her claws retracting into her fingertips. As she walked back up the stairs, she stopped and looked back at me. "I know you'll be a wonderful caretaker," she said, a genuine warmth in her voice. "I chose you for your gentleness. You'll make sure they're well fed and grow to be big and strong, won't you? A good father should." "Father?" The word hung in the air as she disappeared into the darkness above. Every horrible implication crashed down on me. I screamed and thrashed, a mindless, cornered animal, until something inside my stomach shifted. A sharp, searing pain, like a hot knife, lanced through my abdomen. It wasn't a cramp. It felt alive. It was moving. I screamed as I felt something tear inside me. I passed out, not from the blood rushing to my head, but from pure, unadulterated agony. Music fades to a softer, but still unsettling, ambient tone. A sense of disorientation. I awoke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright. I was in my own bed. In my own apartment. Sunlight streamed through the blinds. The familiar sounds of city traffic drifted up from the street below. I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding. I was drenched in sweat, my sheets twisted around me. I ran to the bathroom, my legs trembling. It was just a dream. A nightmare. The most vivid, horrifying nightmare of my entire life. I sobbed with relief, gripping the sink, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at my reflection. I looked like hell. My face was corpse pale, with dark, bruised-looking rings under my eyes. And on my cheeks and jaw, 4 small, red puncture marks, already starting to scab over. My blood went cold. I frantically checked my phone. The date was Wednesday. I'd lost a whole day. I tried to find any trace of her. I searched for Lilith, for the coffee shop. Nothing. I called the Daily Grind. The man who answered had worked there for 5 years. He said he worked the late shift last night, and the night before. He'd never seen a woman matching her description. It was impossible. Was I going crazy? Did I have a psychotic break? Then I felt it. A gurgle in my stomach. A familiar, sickening pressure building in my throat. I leaned over the toilet just as a wave of nausea hit me. I gagged, and a stream of thick, black bile expelled from my mouth, spattering against the porcelain. The pain that followed was unlike anything I had ever imagined. It was a deep, internal agony. I clutched my abdomen reflexively, and my fingers brushed against something odd. Under the skin of my stomach and chest, there were lumps. Dozens of them. Each about the size of a marble. And as I watched in horror, I could see them moving. Rippling. Wriggling their way upwards, beneath my skin, inside my body. I screamed, a long, ragged sound of pure terror. I could feel them moving up my rib cage, into my chest cavity. I could feel them crawling their way into my throat. I clawed at my neck, trying to stop them, but they were inside. I fell to the floor, convulsing. The pressure in my esophagus was unbearable. I felt a scratching sensation, sharp and insistent, from within. Then, one by one, they began to emerge from my mouth. Dozens of them. Bird-sized spiders, covered in the same black bile that now stained my chin and chest. Their sharp, clawed feet scratched and tore the inside of my throat as they climbed their way out into the world. I tried to scream, but my throat was blocked by the grotesque birth canal it had become. My vision swam with black spots as they kept coming, a seemingly endless tide of horrors birthed from my own body. The last thing I remember before passing out on the cold tile floor was the sound of their tiny, clicking legs scattering across the bathroom. Silence for a beat. Then the music returns, very quiet, very somber. I don't know how long I was out. When I came to, the bathroom light was still on, casting a sterile glare on the scene. I felt hollow, empty. All the fat and muscle seemed to have been sucked out of me, leaving me gaunt and skeletal. I was barely strong enough to stand, using the sink to haul my frail body upright. My reflection was a thing of nightmares. Paler than before, my skin stretched taut over my skull. The black liquid was smeared down my mouth, chin, and chest like a morbid bib. I looked like a husk. A container that had been used and discarded. Then I heard it. A soft shuffling and chittering sound coming from my bedroom. My body shaking uncontrollably, I forced myself to move. Each step was an effort. I reached the bedroom door, my hand trembling as I pushed it open. The shock of what I saw stole the breath from my lungs. The room was full of them. Dozens of them. But they weren't just spiders. They had changed. All around the room, sitting on my bed, standing on my dresser, crawling on the floor, were small children. Toddlers. They were completely naked, their skin unnaturally pale and covered in a sheen of that same black slime. I stared, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. I tried to speak, to scream, to do something, but only a tiny, pathetic peep escaped my lips. The sound, as small as it was, cut through the room. In perfect unison, every single head snapped towards me. There was a dead, unnerving silence as I stared at them, and they stared at me with their big, brown, human-looking eyes. My eyes. Then, in a synchronized, horrifying motion, 4 more pairs of small, black, insectoid eyes opened on each of their foreheads. Their mouths opened impossibly wide, revealing tiny, sharp mandibles as they all let out a chorus of high-pitched, chittering shrieks. They rushed me. I fell backwards, screaming, bracing myself to be devoured, to be torn apart by my own monstrous offspring. But that didn't happen. They latched on, yes, but not with their teeth. Tiny, surprisingly strong arms wrapped around my legs, my torso, my arms. They swarmed me, hugging me. They rubbed their tiny, horrible faces against my skin, their multi-eyed gazes fixed on me. They weren't attacking me. They were embracing me. One of them, perched on my chest, looked me right in the eyes. A creepy, jaw-splitting smile formed as it retracted its mandibles, its 6 pairs of eyes blinking slowly. It snuggled closer, letting out a soft, purring-like chitter. It felt content. They see me. They know me. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the very marrow of my hollowed-out bones, what they see when they look at me. I'm not food. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm their father. And today, I suppose, is my very first Father's Day.